Something older than human civilization is currently watching us from above. It arrived 10,000 years before humanity even discovered the wheel. It does not belong to any nation. It does not answer to any government. And right now, as you read these words, it is drifting in a silent, jagged orbit that defies every law of early space exploration. This is the Black Knight, an obsidian relic that has been the ghost in the machine of our global surveillance networks for decades. It appears on radar screens where nothing should exist, and stares back at us through the lenses of high-altitude cameras with a cold, metallic indifference. While official records often categorize it as a mere fragment of discarded insulation or a thermal blanket lost during a mission, the mathematics of its journey tell a far more unsettling story. This is not a story of what we have found in the stars, but of what has been finding us for 13 millennia. The first whispers of this presence did not come from a telescope, but through the crackling static of an experimental laboratory in Colorado Springs. In 1899, Nikola Tesla was experimenting with high-voltage radio transmissions when his equipment began to behave as if it were being interrogated. He intercepted a series of rhythmic, repeating pulses that did not align with any known celestial phenomena, like pulsars or atmospheric interference. Tesla became convinced that he was listening to a conversation from the void, a structured signal originating from an intelligent source that was not on Earth. He was mocked for his claims, dismissed as a visionary who had finally wandered too far into his own imagination. Yet the data he recorded remained, a haunting suggestion that the airwaves were not as empty as we believed. Nearly 30 years later, the mystery deepened when a Norwegian engineer named Jørgen Hals experienced something even more inexplicable. While transmitting shortwave radio signals, he heard them come back to him several seconds later. These were not standard echoes. They were delayed by a factor that defied the laws of physics as they were understood at the time. These long-delay echoes suggested that something in orbit was capturing our signals, holding them, and then reflecting them back as if to acknowledge our presence. It was as if a silent observer was testing our ability to communicate, playing back our own voices to see if we recognize the source of the reflection. By the mid-1950s, the mystery moved from the invisible world of radio waves to the visual spectrum. In 1954, newspapers across the United States, including the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the San Francisco Examiner, carried reports of the United States Air Force detecting two satellites orbiting the Earth. At that moment in history, no nation on the planet possessed the technology to launch a satellite. Sputnik 1 would not make its historic journey for another 3 years. The Pentagon's reported discovery of these dark satellites caused a brief wave of panic and confusion. If the technology did not belong to the Americans or the Soviets, to whom did it belong? The objects were tracked in a polar orbit, a feat of engineering that requires significantly more energy and precision than the equatorial orbits used by early human spacecraft. Even more disturbing was the speed at which these objects moved. They were traveling in a way that suggested a mastery of orbital mechanics that humanity would not achieve for decades to come. In 1960, the tension reached a breaking point. The North American Air Defense System, or NORAD, detected a massive, dark object in a near-polar orbit. It was estimated to weigh over 15 tons, far heavier than anything a rocket of that era could possibly lift into the sky. For 3 weeks, the object was tracked as it circled the globe, silent and unresponsive. Governments scrambled to identify it as a secret Soviet weapon, while the Soviets assumed it was a covert American spy platform. When both sides realized they were equally baffled, the object was officially classified as a space mystery. Then, just as quickly, the public narrative began to shift toward discarded satellite debris. But fragments of metal do not maintain stable, controlled polar orbits for weeks on end, and they certainly do not weigh 15 tons. The most chilling piece of evidence surfaced during the STS-88 mission in 1988, the first space shuttle mission to the International Space Station. Astronauts aboard the Endeavour captured a series of high-resolution photographs of an irregularly shaped, pitch-black object hovering against the backdrop of the blue Earth. It looked like nothing else in the NASA catalog. It was jagged, asymmetrical, and possessed a surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. NASA quickly released a statement identifying the object as a thermal blanket that had drifted away during an extravehicular activity. However, veteran observers and researchers pointed out a glaring discrepancy. The object in the photos appeared solid and structural, with a complex geometry that bore little resemblance to a flexible, fluttering thermal shroud. Furthermore, the object's location and the trajectory it maintained suggested it was a self-contained entity, moving with a purpose that a lost piece of fabric could not mimic. The debate over the Black Knight took an even more cerebral turn when a Scottish astronomer named Duncan Lunan decided to analyze the long-delay echoes from the 1920s. By mapping the delays against star charts, he claimed to have decoded a message hidden within the timing of the pulses. According to Lunan's calculations, the signals formed a map centered on the star system Epsilon Boötis, as it would have appeared from Earth 13,000 years ago. This date coincides roughly with the end of the last ice age, a time when humanity was transitioning from nomadic hunter-gatherers to the very first flickers of organized society. If the Black Knight is indeed a probe from Epsilon Boötis, it has been an eyewitness to the entirety of human history. It watched the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, and the first mushroom clouds of the atomic age. It has seen our greatest triumphs and our darkest hours, all while remaining a silent, unblinking observer in the cold dark. Critics argue that the Black Knight is a modern myth, a patchwork of unrelated events stitched together by a desire to believe in the extraordinary. They point to the fact that space is increasingly cluttered with space junk, thousands of pieces of metal, paint chips, and frozen coolant that can easily be mistaken for something more sinister when caught in a certain light. They argue that Tesla's signals were likely natural radio interference, and that the 1960 sighting was a misidentified piece of a Discoverer satellite. But this skeptical view often ignores the sheer volume of coincidences. It does not explain why the 1954 detections occurred before any human-made object was in space. It does not explain why the 1998 photographs show an object that many aerospace experts find difficult to reconcile with a simple thermal blanket.
We're out of options.
And it certainly does not explain the mathematical precision of the star map decoded from the early radio echoes. If we entertain the possibility that this object is artificial and ancient, we must ask the most frightening question of all. What is its purpose? In the world of interstellar theory, there is a concept known as a Bracewell probe. This is a hypothetical autonomous spacecraft sent by an advanced civilization to orbit a distant planet and wait for the local inhabitants to achieve a certain level of technological maturity. It would act as a silent sentinel, a bridge between two worlds that only activates once the primitive species demonstrates it is capable of understanding the signal. Under this lens, the Black Knight isn't just a satellite. It is a dormant messenger. It is waiting for us to prove we are worthy of a conversation. It doesn't interfere because it is programmed to observe the natural evolution of a species, recording our progress without tainting our development. Alternatively, the implications could be far more utilitarian. An object that has remained in orbit for 13,000 years is a masterpiece of longevity. It suggests a power source and a material science that are light years beyond our current capabilities. It could be a scout, a simple mapping drone left behind by a long-gone expedition. Or, more darkly, it could be a warning. If the Epsilon Boötis system once sent out probes to various habitable worlds, the Black Knight might be the only one left, a lonely monument to a civilization that no longer exists. It orbits a planet that is finally beginning to reach back into the void, yet it remains silent, perhaps because the masters who programmed it are no longer there to receive its reports. The official stance remains one of cautious dismissal, yet the photographs remain in the public domain, staring out from the archives with a cold, metallic indifference. There is a specific kind of dread that comes from looking at the 988 images, a realization that we might not be the masters of our own backyard. We spend billions of dollars searching for life in distant galaxies, peering through the James Webb telescope at light that is billions of years old, while a potential answer might be sitting just a few hundred miles above our heads. It is a ghost that haunts our orbit, a reminder that the timeline of the universe is vast, and that our tenure on this planet is but a heartbeat in the eyes of the Obsidian Watcher. Every time a new satellite is launched, every time a telescope scans the horizon, there is a chance of an accidental encounter.
We can't let them dock.
There are reports from astronauts, often whispered or shared in off-the-record conversations, of unidentified structures seen during high-orbit maneuvers. These accounts describe dark shapes that move against the stars with a fluid grace, disappearing as soon as they are focused upon. While NASA maintains that these are reflections or ice crystals, the consistency of the descriptions across decades of spaceflight is difficult to ignore. The Black Knight seems to exist in the periphery of our vision, a shadow that retreats when the light gets too bright, only to return when we aren't looking. The mystery of the Black Knight persists because it occupies the space between science and folklore. It is a puzzle where the pieces almost fit, but never quite lock into place. It challenges our sense of being the first and only intelligent force to occupy this corner of the solar system. Whether it is a piece of discarded garbage from a forgotten mission or a sophisticated piece of alien hardware, its presence forces us to confront the unknown. We live in a world where we believe everything is tracked, mapped, and understood. Yet, high above the clouds, a 13,000-year-old secret continues its silent journey around the world, drifting through the vacuum, waiting. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Black Knight is its silence. If it is a probe, it has had every opportunity to communicate. It has heard our first radio broadcasts, our television signals, and the digital roar of the internet. It has been bathed in our transmissions for over a century, yet it has never replied. This silence could be interpreted as a lack of intelligence, or it could be the ultimate form of observation. To an entity that has existed for 13 millennia, the entirety of human technological history is just a momentary noise. It does not speak to us, because we have not yet said anything it finds worth answering. As we continue to push further into the cosmos, the Black Knight remains a sentinel of the old world and a gatekeeper of the new. It sits at the edge of our world, a dark mirror reflecting our own curiosity and fear back at us. We may one day send a mission specifically to intercept it, to touch its surface and finally read the data etched into its ancient core. But until that day, it remains an anomaly, a glitch in the official narrative of human progress. It is the silent night that guards the threshold of the stars, reminding us that while we are looking up at the heavens, something in the heavens has been looking down at us for a very, very long time. Is it a warning, or is it a scout? Is it a relic of a lost Earth civilization, or a visitor from a star system we can barely see? The answers are hidden in the shadows of its obsidian hull, drifting in a polar orbit that we are only now beginning to master. The Black Night does not care about our theories or our names for it. It simply continues its ancient, lonely vigil, a dark speck against the infinite stars, watching as we slowly, painfully learn to climb. It has seen the beginning of our journey, and it seems content to wait in the silence for the end. This silence is not merely an absence of sound, it is a profound statement. We have spent the last century shouting into the dark, broadcasting our music, our wars, and our desperate hopes for a response. We have sent gold-plated records on Voyager and high-powered bursts of binary code toward distant star clusters. Yet, the closest possible answer has been circling us since the time of the mammoths. It is a presence that demands we question our place in the cosmic hierarchy. Are we the masters of this world? Or are we merely subjects in a vast planetary laboratory? The fear associated with the Black Night is not the fear of an invasion. It is the fear of being seen for exactly what we are. For 13,000 years, this object has recorded the rise of cities and the burial of empires. It has witnessed the scars we have carved into the earth and the smoke we have pumped into the skies. It has seen the development of the wheel, the steam engine, and the silicon chip. If it is a probe, it carries a record of our species that is more complete than any history book ever written. It knows our capacity for creation and our hunger for destruction. In the final analysis, the Black Night represents the ultimate thriller. It is a mystery that exists in the physical world, caught on film and tracked by radar, yet it retreats into the realm of the impossible the moment we try to grasp it. It is a reminder that the universe is not obligated to make sense to us. We may find that the truth is far more complex than a simple alien probe or a piece of space junk. It may be that the Black Night is a remnant of a history we have completely forgotten, a technological peak reached by an ancient human civilization that collapsed long before the first pyramids were built. As the sun sets and the first stars begin to appear, the Black Night crosses the horizon, invisible to the naked eye, but ever present. It remains the silent observer, the ancient watcher that has seen the birth of everything we know and will likely remain long after we are gone. The question is no longer whether it is there. The question is what it will do when we finally reach out and touch it. Until then, it continues its orbit, a dark speck against the infinite, watching as we slowly, painfully, learn to climb. It has seen the beginning of our journey, and it seems content to wait in the silence for the end. The truth of its origin may remain a mystery, but its presence is a profound reminder that in the vast, dark thriller of the universe, we are rarely as alone as we think.